Good afternoon, everybody. It is currently February 4th, 12:15 p.m. Mountain Time, and we are in week 3 of Mod 1 in 2019, DES109 Graphic Design 1. We hope everybody had a great weekend and you enjoyed the Super Bowl game, whether you are from the East Coast or the West Coast. I am exhausted. I don't know about anybody of you, but at least with me, it was part due to the fact that I had a paper to write. So I didn't watch the whole game. But we are going to jump in today to the critiques from last week and do a little overview of what we're going to be doing this week. And so let's just get started. So for today, the live session 1 agenda, excuse me, we're going to do a quick review of last week. And actually of the 2 weeks prior, we'll do some critiques and some feedback of a few of the submissions, and we'll quickly go over this coming week and some details with that. I won't go too far into it because we're going to do our demo tomorrow and go through some of the details for the assessment as well. So as we are proceeding through the mod, we have concluded with weeks 1 and 2, week 1 being what is design. So we talked a little bit about design trends and design history. We talked a little bit about what design principles are, the contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, excuse me, and Gestalt theory was the quiz, and those items were also addressed in the pre-recorded lecture. Week 2, we talked about the elements of design and how they work with the principles, so the elements being line, dot, texture, shape, pattern, color, etc., and how they come together to create a composition. We worked on the advertising makeover for the poster, where you were given some text copy and needed to lay that out in a style from one of the styles you chose from the week before, the flashcards. And your assessment was the self-critique and your explanation of your design process, where you kind of explained your step-by-step process of your design, what you were doing, what you were thinking, how you were thinking, and kind of giving yourself a critique on whether you thought that it could have been improved as much, which design principles you used, which elements you used, which ones you could have used more, and that type of thing. This week, week 3, we're going to talk a little bit in the discussion about finding creativity and inspiration. We can look in all different avenues of life to find inspiration for our work, and it is something that is ongoing because it is very easy to become dry and stale from just trying to be creative all the time. So finding new ways of kind of creating that little spark is very important to do. And in the assignment, we're going to be creating an ad and a mood board. So it's a little bit kind of combination of weeks 1 and 2. We're going to be creating the mood board, which is essentially a collage of imagery and typography and color of an individual style. And we're going to be taking that style and extrapolating the different elements and principles from it and creating an ad, just like we did last week, for a poster for an art exhibition. And then for the assignment, we'll be doing a social media assignment where there are 3 social media ads that you guys will be designing, working with some imagery, photographs and typography using some text that has also, again, been provided to you. And then next week, we'll actually get started on your online portfolio. That's going to be your assignment for next week, to create the online portfolio. And we'll discuss a little bit of the importance of your design presence, and especially in 2019, why it is so important. And then your assessment is actually learning from the past part 2. It's your assignment from this week that you will be taking the revisions and the feedback that I provide in your grade, and you will be making those revisions and then uploading that revised poster to your online portfolio. So your assessment and your assignment are very closely intermingled for next week. So, and this is one of my favorite weeks, because it kind of makes it feel real that you guys are getting into the field. Just a reminder to watch the pre-recorded lecture, because the information in those is super, super important. We'll go over that a little bit today, where I believe we're talking about the different ways to market an ad on social media, the importance of keywords, and how to pick the right ones. So that particular pre-recorded lecture, just like the first 2 weeks, very, very important on being able to understand the rest of the information in the course. So quick review for week 2. We discussed in our discussion, we talked a little bit about the elements and principles of design. We talked about those 2 menus, we talked about the 1 menu actually in the prompt, and how we would change it and apply the different elements and principles of design. And actually we were provided with a lot of interesting discussion and a lot of imagery, which was awesome, because I always think that it makes the discussions a little bit more fun and eye-catching if there are some kind of images to reference. So there were a lot of really great things there. And I had provided 2 samples of some menus that a lot of people had great opinions on, and ideas of how to improve, especially the first one. There were even some comments on improving the second one, which I hadn't even thought of, which just goes to show you that you can always be learning something. And then the the assignment was taking one of those errors from week 1 and creating an ad that we'll be doing some critiques on that in a second. And the assessment was the design process and the self-evaluation. And that's very important. The reason why we do that is because that is incredibly important, especially when you are actually in the industry trying to articulate to a client or to your boss why you may have put something together the way you did, why you made the choices you did, how you came to the conclusion of your creation. So being able to reason that out and justify your process is very important, to be able to communicate that. So let's get to the critiques. Remember, the critiques are super important for learning. It is, even in my experience that I've had, I'm constantly learning. I get critiques both from regular designers, from designers that have been in the field for a long time, from non-designers. Sometimes that's even actually better, depending on what your project is. Remember, when you are giving critiques, to consider those principles, the design principles: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, because we don't want to design crap. So just make sure to remember that whatever feedback you might be giving to someone else, apply that to your own work, and make sure that you are not exempting yourself from those suggestions. If you submitted your artwork last week, or your assignment last week, on time, and you would like to take any of the feedback that I gave you and resubmit it to get a better grade, you can absolutely do that. I'll accept revisions by the end of the week, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. So let us go through our critiques here. I'm just pulling up my submissions on my other screen here. There we go. And we'll do a couple of these, and then we'll carry on with the rest of the lesson for this week. And if I'm able to put together another couple of critiques, if we have time, then I will certainly do that. So this student right here went with the grunge period, and I think overall it has done a very, very nice job. The distressed background, it's funny, actually kind of funny. It didn't do this when I was looking at it yesterday, but it's kind of making my eyes go a little bit wobbly, and I'm not really sure why. But they chose a very interesting grungy kind of font where we have this, you know, every other letter is kind of distressed. There are some that have kind of a reversed effect, so it's almost like a cutout, almost like this was stamped, or maybe just, you know, cut out like from a magazine and pasted on there kind of thing. We have another one right here. It's kind of like a chalky font, which has a little bit of a distressed look to it as well. The use of hierarchy is evident, where we have 20% is nice and big, and then off all retail. I probably would have actually either put off on the same line as 20%, so it sounds like 20% off, or maybe made the word off the same size as 20%, so that it kind of indicates that those two words are supposed to go together. Let me actually pull this up. There we go. So almost, oh, for goodness sake, sorry about that. You know, if we were to maybe not draw, maybe extend this so it actually came all the way out here, so it's the same width. This right here will kind of stick together, and then all retail, that's setting it up, those two lines, totally fine, and we're using a decent amount of space here. I probably would actually try to increase the contrast just a little bit more, because like I said, because this is making my eyes go cuckoo right now. Let me take these off. And I mean, this particular student did a really kind of neat thing out back here with the watermark of Sky Studios. Looks like they probably just utilized a transparency effect on it and then kind of overlapped it, which really is kind of a neat kind of look. But we have the 20% off all retail. It definitely has a lot of really good contrast, but I think because of the pixelated background, like I said, it's making my eyes kind of go nuts. So we could definitely maybe, let me zoom out a little bit more here. We could probably even do something as simple as just taking this 20% off all retail and just moving it down a little bit so it's more in this darker area, because we have the 20% is kind of borderline. We have it's starting to, the gradation right back here is starting to kind of get light. So maybe that's why it's making my eyes kind of nuts. So even just dropping it down, I think that the reason why the individual probably placed it here is because it is actually centered with this other text. You can see the centers kind of match up, the grand opening in the February 2017. So that was definitely something that they were considering, which is very smart. You could always, depending on how this background is set up, the individual could potentially just stretch the background out a little bit so more of this darker area kind of covers in here. And then they wouldn't even actually need to move the text. So in terms of contrast, you definitely can read the text because of the background versus the dark type. Repetition, we have the repetition of this, I can't think of the name of this font off the top of my head, but I like using this as well. Oh, I'm totally just blanking out here. But as you can see, they use it right here and they use it over here. And so that it kind of actually makes your eye kind of do this thing where it reads grand opening and then, oh, wait a minute, look, that is the same type as, or the same font as well. So kind of connects the two of them together. But it's broken up by this other very interesting font that has a similar style, similar jagged style to this one. So again, we have a lot of movement actually within this piece. Some people have a tendency not to like the vertical type. I personally do. Some people find that it's hard to read. So you just got to make sure that you're careful that it is legible. I think the date is definitely very legible. I probably would maybe make these letters just a little bit taller and kind of eliminate some of the space that's within them to kind of put them closer together. That would most likely make it a bit more readable, but I do like the use of, you know, kind of making this a vertical layout. The only thing I think we're missing, actually we weren't even really missing it, it was missing in my eye. We have the website right here, which is again another use of hierarchy, which is great because the website is just kind of like an afterthought. You know, make sure to visit this website for a little bit more information of what we are advertising right here. So you don't want to make that huge, but we have a lot of empty space right down here, so we probably could actually take that and just put it right down here, and it would balance it out nicely. I think that your watermarks in here probably fill in this space enough that it's not going to feel like it's missing something over here. Overall, very, very nicely done. Could probably even use maybe a little bit more color. Doesn't have to be real bold because the grungy period was not like that. Maybe some muted, some earth tones, browns, dark greens, you know, here and there. It doesn't need to be overwhelming, but like I said, overall, very, very nicely done. Let's grab the next one. Okay, here we have another black and white one, interesting enough. And this one, I believe, was the Art Deco period. And I'm actually going to, I wasn't even thinking about this, but let me actually bring up a couple of examples to kind of compare, because I think that would actually be beneficial, so I can show you guys exactly where this individual was going with this. So, for example, so Art Deco, oh goodness, I'm sorry, it just kind of expanded on me. There we go. Art Deco, we had a lot of patterning, a lot of really dynamic lines, some chrome kind of looks to them. If you take a look at this one closely, oh, for goodness sakes, the gold gradient kind of has a metallic look to it. And, you know, there were a lot of geometric shapes. This individual used a lot of triangular areas, a lot of rectangle, although actually this isn't connected here, so it almost looks like a maze, which is really kind of a neat effect there. They most likely used the offset path tool to create all of these different shapes, because you can see that they are essentially, they're not all completely equidistant from each other, but that's okay because it kind of creates a nice effect, like you're kind of going back into space. We have, you know, a little bit more space here than we do in here. It has a really, really nice kind of, I was going to say texture, but that's not really the right word. Almost kind of looks sleek. We have these blocks over here, this really kind of neat element that has like the idea of like an architectural element. Maybe you might have seen this in a hotel in their foyer back in that time frame. You know, maybe like a tiling or at the top of a column or banister or something like that. And the elements that this person has used, they have stuck mainly with line and shape, and there's a lot of kind of like reverberation going on in these particular elements. You could have probably transferred this over to the psychedelic era, simply by making these shapes a little bit more organic instead of geometric, and, you know, with the sharp points and the diagonals, it may be making them very rounded and kind of blobby. technical term, you know, that, you know, if you could very easily add some color in there and boom, all of a sudden you've got a psychedelic era kind of look to it. But the font that they've used kind of has a repetitive look to it as well. It's kind of the reverse of what this patterning is in the back. We mainly have a black background with white lines, and the text is the opposite. It's got a white background with black lines with the openings in it. It's got a nice stable kind of look to it. Almost reminds me of maybe like a movie font, like a not Broadway, but you know, like a movie sign. Let's see if I can actually even movie sign. Actually, you know what? Let's say let's see what comes up with that, so I can actually show you guys what I'm talking about. Actually, this is very similar. So actually, these look like neon signs, which is not really what I was thinking of. But I mean, if you look at it, you have like a double line outline in the type there. I was thinking somewhere more along the lines of this right here, where I know that this right here, I believe, is Broadway. It may be, no, it's not Broadway. I believe that is Broadway, that font. So you know what? This is very similar. It's not open like this font, but these are kind of like the kind of look, or the kind of feeling that I was looking at. Here we go. Look at that. Skyline kind of looks like that. And hey, look, that's another neon. So that must be kind of what the feeling I was kind of going for there. Something kind of neon. It was lights. So I mean, they've done a very nice job of aligning everything through the center. The black and white obviously have great contrast against each other. There's plenty of repetition with the shapes, with the lines, with the font all the way through. We could probably, I would say, oh, you know, I'm sorry, before I even go to where I was just, the direction I was just heading, there's plenty of space, so their use of proximity is also very, very, very decent. You know, Sky Studio is placed within this block nicely, and there's enough space all the way around it that's not encroaching on the grand opening information. Again, in the website as well is kind of by itself. We could probably increase the contrast a little bit by doing one of a couple of things. We could possibly, just to kind of maybe tone down how much movement we have, kind of working our eyes, the reverberations, by maybe filling in some of this text. So instead of, where's my zoom tool? Oh, no. There we go. That's what I wanted. Instead of the all of the letters being, oh, that is just so not thick enough. Instead of all of the letters being cut out like that, maybe have some letters that are actually filled in to kind of take it a little bit easier on the eyes. I mean, obviously we would do that with a little bit more of them, but I'm not going to go through that and waste everyone's time. Oh, look at that. The G and the A didn't go with it. Which, why would it? Because I'm not modifying the PDF. That was kind of silly of me. But let me get rid of those. There we go. But essentially what I'm saying is trying to make these just a little bit more plain, because we have a bit of a decorative font up here. We could also, you know, add a little bit of color. If you go through some of the Art Deco imagery, we do have a lot of black and white, but even this Gatsby poster, it has gold in it as well. We have plenty of other posters that have some other colors in there, so not everything has to be, oh, sorry, not everything has to be black and white, not everything has to be gold or metallic. So we have a lot of, they're not really muted, but they're almost, some of them are almost kind of pastel, but they, you know, a lot of these designs have They're very dynamic. They're very striking. They have a tendency to, I don't know if you're paying attention, but a lot of them have a tendency to kind of emphasize height. We have this one right over here, it's pointing towards the top. Same thing with here, that's emphasizing the buildings. Even the, was it Rocketeer? Yes, Rocketeer. I mean, it's focusing on the Rocketeer shooting up into the sky in this very, very diagonal, very strong diagonal kind of angle. But again, this individual did a very, very nice job with their ad. Let's do one more, and then we'll do some more of the overview, and then we'll come back to this if we can. Because depending sometimes on how much I'm talking, sometimes I kind of ramble on and we don't have a lot of time, and then sometimes I manage to go right through it. So here we have another grunge ad. So actually, let me make sure that I have another. Okay, there's that one. I'm just trying to see if I can find another style. You know what? Actually, let's do this one. This one, I believe, is also Art Deco. I'm trying to remember. You see if I can actually find. I'm trying to see if I can find the original before I renamed it. Is that it? Oh, yep, that is. Give me just 1 second and I will take a look, because I just want to make sure that. Oh, she didn't actually put that on her submission. So I do believe that this was Art Deco. So we have on this one, like the other Art Deco, a lot of patterning. This was a very, very interesting pattern, and I don't know if this individual created a pattern swatch or a pattern brush, or if they just did this all manually. Either way, it's a very, very interesting and very neat. We have a lot more color than in the previous one, so there's a little bit of a difference there. Neither one of them are right or wrong. It's just the design there. The font I probably would have changed to something a little bit more like we were looking at. We have a lot of kind of thin, kind of not industrial, that's really not, kind of chic, I guess is maybe the word I'm looking for. Kind of chic kind of look to it. Let me see, elegant. Yeah, that definitely would be another example. Kind of fonts. The script kind of font here doesn't really go so well with this particular era. Okay, but they utilized the patterning in the background. We have the frame kind of in the middle here. We have the color repeats from the background to the front here to kind of frame this off. And that kind of does a couple of things. It actually separates the space. It provides a little area for the website. We probably could nudge the website down just a little bit. It's very tricky when you are when you're trying to fit some text within a block like this. The characters that hang off the baseline can cause a problem in trying to center the text, because the program, according to the program, this is probably completely centered, but we have a lot more space right here than we do right here. And that's really because this is the baseline, not that right there. So when you are trying to fit in a block like this, you need to do one of two things. One option is to make this all capitals. That doesn't work all the time, because depending on the font that you've chosen, sometimes making it all capitals can be very, very difficult to read. So if you choose not to go that route, because either you just don't want to do that, or because it really doesn't make it any easier to read. Just, this is where you would kind of use the visual alignment as opposed to actually relying on your software to center something. Probably 1 or 2 nudges that way, just on the keyboard, boom, boom, would make it look a little bit more centered, even though InDesign or Illustrator would tell you it's not. Just a little trick you got there. And so let me see what else we have. We have the hierarchy, grand opening, perfect. Excuse me, with the date, which is a little bit smaller, which is great. Probably should center these only because, oh, it's not, oh, because I have my annotation tool up. There we go. So the text here, grand opening February 17th, 2017, this as a block is centered over this. It almost actually kind of looks like a ribbon, like a belly band on an invitation or something. And that is also centered over this. So we probably would want to actually take, excuse me, the text and center that within itself too. So just kind of moving this just slightly so that this text is centered. Sky Studio has plenty of space around it, so we did a good job there with proximity. And we could probably even enlarge this a little bit more because we have a lot of space right here. So we could do one of a couple things here. We could enlarge 20% off. We could enlarge all retail, so actually it is a little bit more like this. And then, you know, we have a little bit more space up here. We could also, this individual did this kind of border or the rectangle right behind it. You could even actually kind of do that right here, which is going to end up taking a little bit more space, you know, kind of. And, or actually even, this actually might actually utilize the space a little bit more as well. Maybe not enlarging all retail that much. Maybe you just want to make it just a little bit, but you could put like a fancy little design element in there. You know, little swirls, or maybe this particular pattern, maybe we could extract that and kind of create a little something kind of shape in there for some more repetition. The use of the brownish with the pink or the tan or the gold, whatever you would want to call that, creates a lot of nice contrast. And actually the white kind of fading over the brown is also a very nice effect. So again, very nicely done. Oh, and actually I didn't even indicate this, despite the fact that, you know, we were talking a little bit about the, you know, the black and white in the other one, and this one has a little bit more color. The bright pink here might not be really part of the era, but the fact that they have, you know, the paler pink in the background and then the darker pink in the foreground, the dark pink works really well over both the brownish gold and the pink. There's plenty of contrast, so you can see the student didn't put anything behind this text in order to make it readable, and that's because there was enough contrast in this color choice that you can read it. So very well done on that color choice. That can be a difficult thing to try to figure out. So oh, actually I only want to get rid of one of them, because if I have time I want to go over this one right here, which apparently I still have some annotations on here. I'm getting better with these, but sometimes I am still kind of learning. All right, so let us go back here quickly. Let's close that guy out. And my shoe. So in week 3, our learning objectives this week is to identify and apply how the basic elements support those principles of design. We're going to be extrapolating that information again in a little bit more of an involved way. We're going to, in the discussion, talk about the application of 3 historic and 2 contemporary design inspiration sources on design production. So we'll talk about those different types of inspiration sources, why they're important, how they're important, and how you can utilize them to the best of your ability. And we will, in our assignment, oh, I'm sorry, that is, this is actually for the assessment. Compose digital content to communicate an idea and make a statement. So this is where we're going to be creating those banner ads for social media, and design graphics to support current graphic design discipline trends related to social media. So essentially, those last two are using the social media and digital world to your advantage, to creating a message that's not going to be put in print, and kind of utilizing that. You only have, you have just a few seconds to make an impression on a potential client or potential consumer for, you only have a couple of seconds to grab their attention. In the web design field, excuse me, they say you have about, I think it was 5 seconds to make an impression. And if your potential viewer is lost in those first couple seconds, they're not going to bother with your website, and they're going to keep moving on. Same thing kind of here. You're only going to have a few seconds to catch their attention, to make them, to drive them to an action, to make them want to click on your ad, to get them to the reason why you are putting that ad out, which, whether you are simply trying to drive them to your website or you're trying to drive them to your offer, like 20% off retail. So we'll be going over those things. So now let's actually, we're going to go through the announcements, and we already did the learning objectives. We'll go over the media briefly, and I will also very briefly go over the discussion and assignment and assessment, because like I said, we will be doing those tomorrow. So for our announcements, some of you probably will have noticed in your grades from last week, I mentioned in quite a few of the ads to just be careful of line breaks. There were a lot, and this is very, very common, so don't go crazy worrying about it. It is just, part of the learning process in all of this education you guys are getting, that it is very easy to have your words broken up in the middle of one of those text boxes where you have that little dash. It typically breaks it up within syllables, or in between syllables, I'm sorry. You might see that in magazines, you might see that in novels, that kind of thing. A lot of advertisements, however, are not prone to using those because your customers are going to typically not want that. There are ways that you can get around it and format the rest of your type so that it doesn't look noticeable. If you'll even notice it right here in my announcement in Canvas, I didn't do anything. This is all automatic formatting, but there are no line breaks here in between words because it does make it difficult to read. So most programs are not even going to allow that, but because this is InDesign is a page layout program, it will do that. And as long as it fits in that text box. In Illustrator, you're not going to find that as much because you actually have to hit return in order to get it to go down, unless we're actually working in a text box as well. So, but these are just some tips on on how to keeping your lines balanced. These are, and this was, it is like a Wikipedia kind of thing, but it was incredibly useful because it gives some do's and some don'ts using the exact same sentences. So you can see very easily how a line break would affect a specific sentence. I like to say, read what it is you're saying out loud, and if it doesn't make sense or if it's emphasizing the wrong part of your sentence or the wrong word, do it again. Put your line break in a different spot. So for example, this one right here says, I adopted a dog, a cat, 3 mice, and a goldfish. This one over here almost reads, I adopted a dog, a cat, 3 mice, and a goldfish. So what's a good way to say it? When you get to the end of your line, it almost causes you to pause, and that's where you can end up not sounding right. Actually, this is a great example right down here. I learned, I'm just trying to make sure. Okay, yes, I wanted to make sure that I was reading this correctly. I learned more about James Tiptree Jr. on Wikipedia. Right here, you have a whole name being broken up, but you really want to not do that, and you're going to be using some names in your assignment this week, so keep that in mind. This second example actually has the whole name all together, and that can be really, really tricky. But the more you do it, the more you get used to kind of doing that. So that's just it. Like I said, it's very, very quick because I don't like giving you guys long things to read or watch, but I do like to make sure that I'm providing some extra help. Week 3 schedule for Rachel. She has plenty of time this week. I think her schedule is pretty much the same every week. But so today is Monday. She's not on today, but she is Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Lots of hours if you need some help. Her contact information is below and is on the little advert there. And for those of you, I did get a couple of questions on resources for stock photos and vector resources that I know that I've gone over them a couple of times in these lectures, but just as, just for a reiteration, these are, I actually have 2 different links, photos and vector, and each one of these articles has a whole bunch of them on there, a whole bunch of resources. So if you can't find something in one, take a look at the next one. Maybe you can find what you're looking for. And don't pay for anything simply because no one needs to be paying for things like that in education. In the design world, you will come across things where you will have to pay for things. So right now, save your money. Just focus on the free things because there are plenty of items out there. So let's go to home, down to the readings and videos. Here we go. We have our pre-recorded lecture. Look at that. It's under two hours this time. 1 hour and 51 minutes. Actually, how much was last week? Yeah, last week was 2 hours on the dot. So we're going over the elements and principles, just basically talking about a history of social media and then designing for broadcast. We have a couple of couple of articles here talking about advertising digitally, and this is where I was talking about we're talking about keywords and trends, how to make the most out of your ad. We want to make sure that they are fairly simple, but they get your message across, that your image is effective in supporting your message but is not overpowering. And a great link right here, how to choose a good ad. I mean, this right here, just in general, this could be a perfect ad. We have a little bit of text. We have a great big image of the back, boom. So it gives a lot of really great information on here. Some tips and some do's and don'ts and whatnot. And then the lynda.com playlist is actually going over Photoshop because that's the program that you're going to be using for your social media banner ads. And excuse me, I actually have an announcement as well that I think is scheduled to be sent out tomorrow on the artboards, because you will have to export your file as a multi-page PDF and you'll be using artboards. So these, especially if you have never used Photoshop before, these are very important to make sure that you have the tools that you need to do your assessment this week. And let's see, oops. I just had switched over by accident. So we've gone over the media. And actually, as always, we have our live sessions that I just want to indicate. I highlight everything in yellow for that particular week. So after this session, I will be eliminating the highlight on these, and highlighting today's session so that it's easier to find. Okay. And where are we now? Discussions. And you'll have to excuse the fact that this is not loading. They all still work, they just, the thumbnails every once in a while don't work. So for our discussion, like I said, we'll be talking about historic and contemporary design inspiration sources. So like I have mentioned, it is very difficult to try to make sure that you are creative all the time. It is very easy to get, you know, dried out, to feel like you are empty, drained. So finding these inspirations or these ways to be creative are very important in our industry. So we have 5 inspiration sources here that are very commonly used: museums or their websites, design archives, podcasts and YouTube presentations, contemporary design blogs as opposed to an art history design blog, and nature or nature websites, nature books, that kind of thing. So our prompt for this week, we are pretending that we are attending a networking event with several other designers, and one of the designers that we're talking with is stuck on a logo, stuck on their project, and they're becoming very discouraged. And like I said, that is so common. Just wait until you get to that point. So he's feeling totally uninspired and is considering telling the client he cannot complete the project because he has no other good ideas. Sometimes is the best way to go. However, it's not always, and we like to make sure that we are ensuring that we give it our best effort, because we obviously don't want our clients or our supervisors to think that we are going to give up easily. So we are going to discuss with the coworker, colleague, what have you, why it's important to look outside yourself for inspiration and how he might apply any of the 3 historic, these first 3 up here, or 2 contemporary, these 2, design inspirations on his production. Why can looking to the historical sources stimulate creativity? Why can looking to the contemporary sources inspire and stimulate creativity? So it can be very, very difficult to even figure out why these are important or how to communicate that with someone. So definitely take a little bit and maybe even read the benchmarks here to kind of get an idea for what other students have had to say on it. I have had some really great discussion posts on this particular week, so I know that it's out there. And you know, I'm not going to go over the assessment and the assignment because I'm going to do the demo and then talk about the social media ads tomorrow anyways. So instead of that, okay, we'll do our secret question for today. Remember, secret question, email me the answer, and you can choose whether you want an additional 5 points on an assignment or a 2-day extension on an assignment. So today's question is, when was the first Super Bowl played? I mean, people could probably figure out the year just given what number Super Bowl this was this weekend. But it was played on January 15th, 1967, so a month earlier than normal these days. And the Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10 and played at Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. Okay, so for those of you that may be struggling, I just want to make sure that I go over this really quick, just some reminders. Make sure to check those announcements. You know, I do try to make sure that I post tips, and Rachel, like I said, Rachel's hours are always posted in there. So there might be the answer that you're looking for within those announcements, and unless you look at them, then you won't know. The live lecture recordings, these recordings are done for your benefit, not because I like hearing myself speak for 2 hours a week. And certainly not because my husband or my 3 kids want to hear me talking for 2 hours a week. These are definitely for your benefit. If you come actually into the live lectures, that's actually even better because I can kind of bounce back and forth off of you guys, and that's actually more helpful, I think, to you guys in addition to me. It brings up topics and questions that I'm not necessarily thinking of. But if you can't come live, at least make sure you watch the recordings, especially on Tuesdays, because Tuesdays is the demo of the assignment. I've gotten a lot of questions on, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do this. And then I found out that they hadn't even watched the recording. And then when they watched the recording for the demo, they had their answers for them. So definitely make sure you watch them. Oops, wrong arrow. Pay attention to those assignment specs. Actually, this course has actually everyone's been doing a really good job of making sure that the correct file type has been submitted. I think I've only gotten 2 submissions that were the wrong file type, and I had to ask again. But make sure that you have all that you need in that assignment. Go through that rubric with a fine-tooth comb and make sure you've got everything you need in there. File naming convention, what you need it saved as, because even though the assignments aren't going to give you step-and-step instructions like the demos on Tuesdays, there is a lot of information in there that you might be able to just figure out. Course media and the Linda videos, that's like the meat and potatoes. Actually, I guess that's like the potatoes, and then the pre-recorded lecture is the meat. That's only going to enhance your knowledge and increase your knowledge. And then the assignments are essentially practice based off of that information. So those are very important. Adobe videos, you go to adobe.help, and you can always Google something. I cannot emphasize enough how simply Googling something and looking for videos that way can be especially helpful and very easy. There are so many people out there willing to share their knowledge, and some of them are great teachers. So take a look out there, especially if you have something specific that you are having trouble on, that you can actually narrow down your search. When all else fails, or if you want to try this first, that's great too. Go to Rachel Fields, go to the Student Success Center, and come to the multi-sessions. Come see me, come talk to me. I am definitely here to help you guys out and to provide assistance, to kind of show you some things. And email me, call me. All of the last 3 resources here, we are here for you guys. And we don't know if there's a problem if we're not told. So, and we can't help if we're not told. So please let us know if you guys are having trouble. So tomorrow, just a reiteration, we have about 6 minutes left, which should be enough for one more critique. So tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time is the next live session. We'll go over, actually the discussion we already kind of did. I always have a tendency to do that. I need to just put the discussion in the Monday session. And we will go over the assignment in detail, step by step, and do the demo. And then I'll actually talk about the assessment a little bit as well too. So let us go over that last ad. Oops, that's not what I want. I want this. There we go. So we have this individual used, they were also doing the grunge style. So, and if you, let me pull up the first one. These 2 grunge styles are very, very different. Neither one of them is any better or worse than the other. Actually, you know what? I think those are, there we go. See if I can pull this off. There we go, so we can kind of compare them. Okay, the one on the left used kind of like, looks like they probably used a noise filter of some sort. And it's very possible that this individual did too, but this person looks like they probably used some kind of swirly or bubbly kind of look, and then put that filter on top of it to make it look a little distressed. You can find all sorts of distressed filters out there too, on those stock sites. So you can overlap them and create like a dirty textured kind of look to it. which is also really great. So this individual over here kind of went in a different direction. They have some really awesome bright colors, which is not necessarily a bad thing in this style. They were very careful, obviously, about the colors that they chose and made sure to repeat them. They're kind of bulbous, angular kind of text. Almost reminds me actually of a rapper rather than something grungy, but I can kind of see where they were going with this. So I wouldn't say that it's not an appropriate font. And then the other font choice we have here kind of looks like, you know, things were cut out of a magazine or whatever. So that absolutely works. And you have in this ad, you can see the use of hierarchy as well, where we have Sky Studio. Grand opening is much, much bigger. And the website right below it, we have this like splatter kind of look to it, which is very grungy type kind of imagery. What I don't know, actually, nope, that's not what I want. I want this. I'm grabbing the wrong tool. I'm just a little confused as to why the individual decided to put the date here instead of here. I think that would probably, now that I'm looking at it, maybe it's because they thought that it would fit in there better. But I think this information definitely should go up here because it is related to the grand opening. Let me zoom back out. Let me see if they have anything on the bottom. Oh yeah, so we could absolutely take the website and drop it right down here. Or maybe even, let me get rid of all that crap. We could even take one of these splotches and make another one that's a little bit longer, if that happened to be the issue, and actually take it and place it right in here. Because the 20% off all retail, I mean, the date could be related to that because that's when the sale is going to be, I suppose. But the date is definitely supposed to be indicative of when that grand opening is. So we have some great contrast with the bright, bright pink, the bright, bright green, and the black. Why is this not helping me? There we go. I had just closed out my tools too quickly. No, there we go. So let me see. Okay, so we were talking about contrast. Those bright colors against the black makes them jump out at you. And I was going to say pop out at you, but I absolutely hate that word because you're going to hear that constantly from clients. The letters, the student decided to take these big bulbous letters and put a black stroke around them, which I think actually helps a lot because it looks like actually, I guess it kind of was necessary up there. Especially in this one, it looks like these letters kind of overlap a little bit. So we could have done one of two things there. We could have either spaced them out, so increase the kerning between those letters. And then if that was going to be too wide, that's when you can start decreasing the vertical scale, horizontal scaling and kind of squishing it in a little bit. Because the overlap does make them a little difficult to read. But by using this black stroke, it does separate those letters a little bit. So we have kind of like a borderline effect here where probably could be improved, but it still looks good. So it's kind of, things aren't always black and white here. So, but now that I'm looking at the time, I'm glad that we were able to go over this real quick. Actually, I didn't, I went over contrast, repetition, we talked about the colors, alignment. Oh, it's all very, the text is all very nicely aligned. It's very balanced too. I don't know if you'll notice, we have up here, we have the text, we have some text down here, and then the person put a blotch over here so that it doesn't feel like it's all going to tip over. Proximity, everything is readable. Nothing's encroaching on one another except maybe those letters. yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I'm glad I was able to go over that. So I was able to give you one more ad. We are at 1/4 past the hour, so I won't keep you guys any longer. And I hope that I will see some of you guys in the session tomorrow.